Let's see here. What do we have here? Okay, so what am I going to talk about today? Well, I wanted to talk about ad hominem, and this was actually inspired by an exchange I had, I suppose you could say, with some people online. And without going into too much detail, basically, I accused somebody of basically making ad hominem fallacies instead of arguing their point. And it had to do with COVID. You see, what I did was, I was having a conversation with someone who claimed that the number of people infected with COVID was less than 1 million worldwide. Or the number of people who had been infected for all time of SARS-CoV-2 was less than 1% of the world population. And I pressed back on that. I pushed back on that statement because, you know, if you go to the WHO's website, their numbers say it's close to 350 million. And so I asked this individual, where are you getting your numbers? And, you know, this person dodged the question and said, basically tried to do what a lot of people do, where they turn that around and say, oh, well, where are you getting your numbers? And so, of course, if you say what your source is, their response is, oh, and you believe them, you know. And I said, my response was basically, yes, all numbers are suspect. Treat all numbers everywhere, anywhere, with skepticism. But that doesn't mean that everyone else should just take your word for your number. You see, if my number is 350 million and your number is 1 million, you know, we can go from there and try to establish where those numbers come from. But just saying your number is wrong because it comes from a biased source, that doesn't help the conversation, because I could just say, well, your number comes from a biased source, so you don't get any extra points. And eventually I got this person, this moron, to admit that she or he, I'm not sure, because I think there were actually two people using the same account, and they were both using it to chat. Basically, say these morons basically concluded with, you know, and they weren't being upfront about that. Like one of the users was Googling stuff for the other person, and, you know, trying to fight their battles for them, I think. And so it was all very unclear. And basically, I got this person or these people to admit that they had basically just pulled a number out of their ass. And in so many words, that's what they did. And so I said, that sounds a lot like something a Holocaust denier would do. And then, you know, this person's or their people's response was to say, that's anti-Semitic, you're an anti-Semite. And I want to respond to that directly. I think my response to that initially was, that's an ad hominem. Because when somebody engages in that kind of debate tactic, you see, they never actually gave their sources. They were not furthering the conversation. So, in some situations, it would be a fallacy to just, you know, equate them with being a Holocaust denier. But from my perspective, that's literally what that's literally how they were behaving. They were behaving like a Holocaust denier when they make up numbers and make up facts and say stuff like, oh, I did my own analysis. Because that's what this person literally said, that they looked at the numbers country by country and added up the numbers themselves, and they got 1 million cases. And I had asked for a breakdown of these numbers. Do you have this information? Do you have your analysis in a file that I can read somewhere? Maybe a blog or a video or anything. And of course the answer, was a lot of fluff, like, oh yeah, no, I have a TikTok video about it. Well, TikTok videos are like 30 seconds long. You couldn't possibly have done your analysis in a TikTok video. And eventually they just said, well, you're an anti-Semite and I don't have to talk to you. And it's like, well, that's an ad hominem, because let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I am an anti-Semite, and let's just say for the sake of argument that what I said was anti-Semitic. That doesn't change my perception that you are acting and behaving like a Holocaust denier when you just make up numbers and you pull stuff out of your ass. That's what I would have. I wanted to continue the conversation, but I was blocked at that point. So I wasn't able to get more information out of this individual. But this is something you'll find. People who argue are like COVID deniers, and people who question the number of COVID cases. Basically, yeah, they're just COVID deniers. They think that Bill Gates and Fauci are running a big scheme to, and they talk out of both sides of their mouth. On the one hand, they say that this virus was engineered in a lab to be a super deadly pandemic, so that these drug companies like Pfizer and Moderna can make money, and it's a big conspiracy. And then on the other hand, they say that's no more deadly than a common cold. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways. But regardless of the fact of that, I think that it actually raises a more general point that I want to talk about. And it's this distinction between ad hominem fallacies and ad hominems that are actually relevant to a discussion. So let's go ahead and do this. I don't know if my volume is screwed up. So an ad hominem, if you Googled ad hominem, we have some definitions here. Still trying to get my audio right. It's an adjective of an argument or reaction directed against a person rather than position they are maintaining. Adverb in a way that is directed against person rather than the position they are maintaining. So, for instance, your arguments are ad hominem. That would be the adverb sense. In a way that relates to or is associated with a particular person. And there are several definitions for the fallacy version of ad hominem. If you go to yourlogicalfallacyis.com, we can see this definition. You attack your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. An ad hominem attacks can take the form of overtly attacking somebody or more subtly casting doubt on their character or personal attributes as a way to discredit their argument. The result of an ad hominem attack can be to undermine the person's case without actually having to engage with it. And that's really the point of using an ad hominem. And I'll get to more specifics later as to how people tend to use this fallacy in their everyday life. But here's an example. After Sally presents an eloquent and compelling case for a more equitable taxation system, Sam asks the audience whether we should believe anything from a woman who isn't married, was once arrested, and smells a bit weird. So an ad hominem is generally a fallacy of relevance, because personal attacks are they're not relevant to the arguments being made. You should be able to judge an argument on its merits as opposed to based on who's making the argument. So an ad hominem means literally to the person. An ad hominem is fallacious in an example like this. So let's see if we can zoom in. The fallacious sense of ad hominem is when a person is a form of argument like this. Person A is bad, therefore his argument is wrong. That's a fallacy. A not fallacious argument is something of the form person A is bad, therefore he is bad. So if you're not actually making an argument, and I know that in everyday life, people will criticize someone, and the implicit understanding is that therefore their arguments are wrong. That's usually the implied statement that isn't necessarily stated explicitly, but it's usually implied. And so you have to be careful if somebody says, that wasn't an ad hominem, that was just a criticism. Well, you have to be careful with statements like that, because it might be true that it is a criticism, but it also might be an implied ad hominem argument. And so you have to be careful about that and learn to recognize it when you see it. Another example of a not fallacious form of ad hominem is person B is biased, therefore she is not a credible authority or a reliable witness. This is a sort of a subtle distinction because if you're making an argument that person B is not a credible authority, then from a classical logical perspective, the other person is already committing a fallacy by arguing from authority. But in classical logic, statements of the form, energy is conserved, or momentum is conserved every time we do an experiment. Therefore, this is a fundamental property of the universe. Well, it might be the case that in another part of the universe somewhere, in another galaxy, there's a completely different form of physics. Maybe there's a part of the universe somewhere, somehow, where there is a sort of a absolute God frame of reference, and if you were to perform the LIGO experiment, the laser beam would actually drift by feet throughout the day as you performed a interferometry experiment like that. It just doesn't happen in this part of the universe. So from a classical logical perspective, inferences that are inductive are not logically valid. But after the Middle Ages, the society had a shift from top-down logical syllogistic thinking to a ground-up scientific frame of learning about the universe. So nowadays we do accept inductive inferences, and we do make statements like all swans are white, until we see instances where there are black swans. So and we also can argue from authority, because really most people don't have the time to sift through evidence for global warming, or a great example of this is if you're arguing for creationism, you could just say, well, these scientists are just wrong. Everything they're saying is just wrong, and they're motivated by money, and they have a profit motive to lie about the gene sequencing and embryology and all the evidence that they claim to be touting as evidence for evolution. And if you're a lay person, you may not have time to discredit that, by going through all the evidence yourself, doing the statistical analysis yourself, because then you'd have to learn how to do a statistical analysis, and you'd have to learn how to read gene sequencing, and even the scientists who do those things don't ever actually see all the evidence and go through it all themselves. They have to take the word of other scientists, other biologists. And from a classical logical perspective, that's a problem, because that's an appeal to authority. Now, for the most part, when people make arguments, if they're being fallacious, they're making a false appeal to authority. They're saying, person B is an authority on X, therefore they are also an authority on Y. And that's the fallacious sense in which appeal to authority can be used. Another way that ad hominem is used is to discredit a witness in a trial. So if a person claims that they saw somebody at 5 o'clock on Wednesday in this particular city, and it turns out that they have a history of being a pathological liar and making shit up and telling the police about it, that's relevant. So that's a sense in which this is a relevant use of ad hominem, so it's not a fallacy. But it's a fallacy when you use it in the first sense. Normally, in our everyday life, when people appeal to ad hominem, what they're doing is they're basically shouting abuse at the other person. This is something that Gary Mosher does a lot. He always he makes this is actually a perfect example of an exchange that can summarize or characterize 90 to maybe 95, possibly even 99% of everything that he says, all his quote-unquote arguments that are so logically sound and so impenetrable that nobody has ever been able to counter him, and therefore his ephilism is the one true philosophy. And because nobody has ever been able to counter his logic, they just make appeals to emotion and blah 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 blah, whatever. Most of his arguments are of the form, you should grow a brain before opening your mouth. I mean, that almost sounds like something he would say. So in this case, this is always a fallacy, because it's distracting. You're trying to distract your debate opponent. You're trying to distract by slinging mud. Just like at a basketball game, if the opposing crowd, spectators, are trying to distract an opposing player from making a free throw by shouting and waving those stupid foam fingers or whatever it is they do. And this is always a fallacy. It's not now. Here is a case where you have to make a subtle distinction between ad hominem and logical inductive inference. So you could say, for instance, Pol Pot advocated for communism as the one correct form of government. However, Pol Pot was a mass murderer, and therefore communism is bad, or communism is wrong, or his arguments that communism is the one true political theory is wrong. And that, technically speaking, from the point of view of Aristotelian logic, that's a ad hominem fallacy. It may very well be the case, and I believe it is, that communism is wrong, that it is not the ideal form of government, that it never works, and that it often leads to genocide and other human rights abuses. But the form of the argument is fallacious. And there's a subtle distinction between the statement, every time communism has been applied or implemented, it has led to human rights violations and mass murder, versus and including instances like Pol Pot, versus a statement like Pol Pot is a murderer, therefore his communism is bad. There's a very subtle distinction there. And if you can tell the difference between those two cases, then you're ahead of the curve from the point of view of being a logical, rational person, or debate opponent, or philosopher or logician. And I think in the case of, calling me an anti-Semite because I compare you to a Holocaust denier, I think that's a fallacy of relevance. Even if that were true, even if what I said was anti-Semitic, that doesn't change the fact that I have that perception of you, that what you're doing is like something that a Holocaust denier would do. Whereas what you're doing when you say that I'm sorry, no, that's not okay. So I think that's a logical fallacy. But in the other case, if I say you are like a Holocaust denier, therefore your argument is wrong, I don't think that's an ad hominem. I think it's a piece of evidence that suggests that your mode of reasoning is bad. And it's very similar to the distinction between the statement, every time communism has been applied, it has led to human rights abuses, versus the statement, Pol Pot was a mass murderer, therefore his politics was wrong. That there's a subtle distinction there. If your mode of reasoning reminds me of Holocaust denialism, that might be a piece of evidence for why people like you are employing fallacious reasoning and bad reasoning. So yeah, that was my little talk or presentation about ad hominem. The word ad hominem is thrown around a lot, and a lot of times it's thrown around in cases where sometimes it's thrown around because it really is a fallacy, and other times it's thrown around when it's not a fallacy. It's a critique of the authority from which the claims are being made. So there's always that subtle distinction. And another thing I wanted to mention is that before I was blocked, this person had, because I accused them of being of committing an ad hominem fallacy, and because this person is associated with Inmendum. I have a theory about Inmendum. I think it's called the 6 degrees of Gary Mosher. Everyone, it's said everybody has 6 degrees of separation from everyone else in the world, and that's true on the internet as well as anywhere else. In fact, the number of degrees of separation probably decreased with the advent of the internet. But if you're restricting your case to just the internet, there's probably a analogous theory, 6 degrees of separation on the internet. And with Gary Mosher, the number associated, your Gary Mosher number, I have found, and I guess if you wanted to think of this as a directed graph, then you could say, well, if your arrow is pointing to Gary Mosher, that denotes that you support his philosophy, and if it's pointing away from him, it denotes that you are a detractor of his philosophy and his scientific bullshit. If your arrow is pointing to Gary Mosher, okay, again, thinking of this from a graph theory framework, meaning that you are a supporter of him, or you're a supporter of him, then the smaller your number is, if it's directed to being a supporter of him, the more disagreeable you are as a person, the more likely you are to start calling someone an idiot right off the bat. It doesn't matter how civilly you were engaging with this person. Inevitably, if they're 2 or 3 or 1 degree of separation from Gary Mosher going in the forward direction, then you're going to be very disagreeable. So this person is very disagreeable right off the bat, and one of my responses was that you don't know what the definition of ad hominem is. And the response I got was astonishing. She said, or he said, I do know what it is. And the example they gave was actually this example. All murderers are criminals, but a thief isn't a murderer and so can't be a criminal. And I said, that's not an ad hominem. You don't know what you're talking about. This proves you don't know what an ad hominem is. It turns out this individual had Googled ad hominem because they didn't know what it meant. And it looks like they copy and pasted this quote without giving the full context. A classic example of ad hominem is given below. Person A says, all murderers are criminals, but a thief isn't a murderer and so can't be a criminal. And person B responds with an ad hominem. Well, you're a thief and a criminal, so there goes your argument. Therefore, your argument is wrong. That's an ad hominem. This is a fallacious statement because there are other, it's affirming or denying the antecedent or affirming the consequent or whatever. One of those two. So this is fallacious, but it's not an ad hominem, and this person didn't even know that. So I think that says a lot about our education system, and the fact that people who make statements who reason that way are also the same people generally, not in every single case, but for the most part, on average, are saying things like COVID isn't real, the vaccine has nano robots in them, and so on and so forth. It really says something about the education in the world, the state of just how terrible our education system is. So yeah, I'm going to make a video about momentum because there was a user that made an interesting video. I don't know. Left a comment. I hate this internet, so slow. Here we go. I don't know how to Dispar Vulgo, I'm not sure how to pronounce their name, but he made an interesting video about daft science, and I wanted to make a video response to that because he did bring up some interesting points in the video. So I had said that Gary Mosher is like a child at this point who has arranged all his stuffed animals in his room to watch him give a concert. I think that's accurate. Why? Because he's making videos on his website where almost no one will see them, and he's not engaging anymore. But he also maintains, and has been maintaining for years now, that he is waiting for one person to make one good argument against his philosophy of science, or his psychology of nonsense, as I have dubbed it. And that's not really true. That's not really true, is it? If you're not actually listening, it's like plugging up ears and saying la 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 la. Why no one's making any arguments to me? Well, how come no one has made a counter argument to my argument? La 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 la. I can't hear you. It's like everybody's been making counter arguments for 10 years now. So I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. But I will, yeah, so I'll make that video when I have time. I've just been busy with stuff, and I'm very busy. I don't have time to constantly make new videos all the time. I wanted to make new videos every day, but I don't have the time for that all the time. Sometimes I do. I'm not even sure who Post America is. Apparently it's like an anti-Biden person. I don't know why I'm subscribed to this person. I'm subscribed to so many people, I don't even know why I'm subscribed to them. There was once upon a time, when I was doing sub for sub, because I wanted to grow my channel, and I think some of these people were just sub for subs or something. I've pretty much given up on trying to, create a real channel with real content.
I was, I can't do Gary Mosier videos anymore because he's not making videos. The ones he does, it's not like there's any back and forth anyway, so there's no point. I mean, it would just be me watching his videos and saying, prove it. You can't prove it. Oh, you made a statement that's a lie because you don't have any evidence. Where's your evidence that LIGO is fake? Like that they faked the LIGO results? Oh, that's right, you don't have any. There's only so many times you can say that over and over again. I can't really make math videos because according to somebody that was giving me like tips. First of all, I think I have more subs than he does, but he was talking about how, well, okay, I take that back. I have he has more subs than I do, but if you actually watch his live streams, they have as many or fewer views than mine do. There's no interaction at all, just like with my live streams. And he's like, people don't go on YouTube for math. And I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? Have you been on YouTube recently? People go to YouTube for math homework. There's a lot of channels out there that do trigonometry and calculus. They just put more effort into it than what I've been putting into my live streams, because I wanted my live streams to be a different kind of have a different character to them. I don't know, but I mean, let's actually go to my channel and see what is on here.
Which is true, it's what you do when you have a problem.
Yeah, so I had the diagonalizability video, which has 0 thumbs up and like 7 thumbs down or some whatever the fuck it is. I have one here. The video where I'm literally just driving around has more thumbs up. So I'm not going to do that, but somebody was saying that I do calculus and trigonometry, and I've correctly pointed out I've never done that on my channel ever. Like, what are you talking about? I literally don't have any videos about that on my channel, but I could, I could have calculus. So what I want to do, and this will actually tie in with the one of the first videos I did, the first Farley Speaks videos. Not the first video I did, but the first Farley Speaks video about how your brain works. It will actually tie into that. So let's go ahead and do that. I don't know what it is with streamers. Like, some people just can't set their volume right. See here. This guy apparently is like an editor or something. He edits videos. Wow. I did something like this. I made a, when Trump was diagnosed with coronavirus. But before that, I had made a little like a GIF or a JPEG with Donald Trump in prison. And I said Donald Trump for prison 2021. And it took me like 5 minutes to make the JPEG. And then I did one, Donald Trump for hell when he was diagnosed with coronavirus. And I mean, it's like anybody could do that. What is it? What is this? Does this make you feel good? Go, Brandon. Whoop-de-doo. Imagine how much time this guy is spending making these fucking clips. Alright, I don't even know who this... Oh, I take that back. No, never mind. I take that back. I know who this is. This is the guy who does all the animations for Shoe on Head. I didn't even realize... Oh, okay, I see. So I guess he's showing, or she, I don't know, is showing how to make how they edit videos. Okay. I didn't know that. I forgot what their name was. Okay, so that's that. So let's go ahead and get started, because it's going to be fun. We're going to do calculus. So we're going to do it the Mickey Farley way. We're going to do Mickey Farley calculus today. So a lot of people are probably wondering what calculus is, and I'm not going to explain that. You're going to have to learn that on your own. But for those of you who are interested, let's say you have a data set. Right? So we have an independent variable and a response variable. This is X and this is Y, and you have a bunch of data items, and we want to analyze the trend of this data. You can run something called linear regression on this data, and what that does is there's different methods, but the way we're going to find a method, the way we're going to find the line of the linear regression line is using something called the line of best fit. And basically what it does is it minimizes the residual, the sum of the squares of the residuals. So what are the residuals are actually, let me change it to this background. The residuals are the distances between our regression equation, which we're going to denote y hat is equal to mx plus b. Okay, that's just our standard linear equation for a line. By the way, if you don't know what that is, stop watching. I don't give a fuck, okay? You guys are such a pain in the ass. You're like, your video is too complex, too like kindergarten. You do kindergarten math, and then when I do math like this, I get like 0 thumbs up, because it's like, who the fuck knows what I'm talking about? Just fuck off. Okay, I'm under no obligation to make videos for you. There's somebody on Piero's video is being a pain in the ass, and I was accused of being this person, by the way. Like, they're like, why are you ragging on Piero? It's like, I don't watch Piero anymore, mostly because he doesn't make videos anymore, but that's fine. I've never I think I've commented on his channel like 3 times in my life. Me and Piero, we have different ideas about what the function of YouTube is supposed to be. We have different ideas about philosophy. Whoever this guy is, who is like they have some stupid. I think they took like a clip or like a image of Warbles on a lot. Chris wearing some kind of stupid hat. He's like calls himself the Princess of Glibism, and then there's like this John Dans the Third, or whatever the fuck his name is, leaving like raggy comments on all of his videos. And the sad part is that this guy, I know it's a guy, just because that's the kind of behavior, thinks he's being funny, like he actually thinks that it's amusing or something. Anyway, I'm not that person. What was I even talking about before? It's like, I'm not. That's not me. I'm not doing that. Again, I have 4 YouTube accounts in total. Okay, I did not expose myself on a MGTOW live stream. That's a lie. But if you're interested in this stuff, just keep watching. But I know you're not. I know nobody gives a shit. You guys want me to? That was why I was talking about it, because this guy John Dans or whatever the fuck his name is wants Piero to just like make videos about Gary and trashing Gary, and really what they want is they want to they were probably in Mendham fanboys at one time in their life. And and the reason they were fanboys is it had nothing to do with like the evidence or like the soundness of his logic. It's like they have daddy issues, so they need like a father figure to yell at people, and they like get off listening to someone. Like, it's like cathartic, I think, listening to him yell. Of course he doesn't do that anymore, because he doesn't do live streams anymore, so He doesn't debate anybody. He doesn't. He just sits in his cellar, his cold, dark, damp cellar, like the cellar rat that he is, little rat boy. Somewhere in New Jersey. I'm not going to see where it is. Being, eating government cheese like a little rat. I don't care. I'm not going to make any more Gary videos. Sorry, there's just no material. I'm all out of it. By the way, that's not my job to make Gary videos for you. Why don't you make Gary videos? Like John Dance, if you're watching this, you could make Gary videos. You could bash Gary, right? None of us on YouTube get paid to make anti-Gary videos. Okay, you're not entitled to other people's entertainment. Do you get it? Does that make sense? You can make videos. I might make a video someday. Maybe someday I'll make a video about more Gary Mosier physics videos. Maybe someday I'll buy the equipment from, or borrow the equipment from a school so I can perform some experiments. Maybe I could perform the laser bending experiment, and I'll film that someday, but I'm not going to right now. I have too many other things to worry about. But yeah, you know what, if you're watching this channel because you want me to bash Gary and trash on Gary, sorry, you're just shit out of luck. I'm not going to do that anymore. But I want to take my channel in another direction. What I'm thinking, and I've pretty much given up on the idea of building this channel, but what I've been thinking of doing is purchasing a YouTube channel that already has content on it and using that. So this might be one, this channel probably isn't going to last very much longer. But I may come back, and if I do come back, it will be with a new channel. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, the only thing you have to worry about, it does go against TOS. So YouTube's TOS specifically says you're not allowed to purchase channels from other people. Now here's the other thing. Here's something I just want to mention. I did not flag Forever Wolf Films channel. If I did, which I'm not saying I did, but if I did, I would be just as justified in doing that as anyone would be in flagging anything, right? I mean, is there like a moral argument against flagging channels? I personally think that it's wrong to flag channels from the point of view, from the perspective of a member of the YouTube debate community, which doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so the fact that it doesn't exist anymore means that, I don't see any obligation left. But it's like the hypocrisy of people who say that it's wrong for me to flag Forever Wolf Films channel, which I didn't do, but if I did, I would admit it, and I wouldn't be ashamed of it, because their channel was crap. Her philosophy, promoted violence, and it probably inspired people like Adam Lanza to perpetrate atrocities. So I don't care. I think it's good that her channel's off YouTube, but I didn't flag it, and that's I have no reason to fucking lie about that. But even if I did, it's how is that different than flagging something else? A professor has art on YouTube. What's wrong? I mean, how is that different than flagging that? If it's okay to flag something because it has nudity, and that's wrong somehow because it goes against TOS, then if I flag Amanda's account and something on her channel violates TOS, and they remove it because of that, then I don't see the difference. And the same goes for MGTOW live streams. if a MGTOW live stream has content on it, like like medical misinformation and other stuff that goes directly against their TOS, and then I flag the live stream and then they get a strike, how is it different than fucking anything that, you know, anyone else ever did? Oh, that's right, it's not. If your justification for doing something is it goes against TOS and therefore it's morally wrong, reprehensible to put something that goes against TOS on YouTube. Hey buddy, anytime somebody posts something that has medical misinformation on it regarding COVID, and somebody flags it, and you know, they get a strike. By the way, I got a strike, or not a strike, but a warning on my channel for misinformation because of the video I had made called the Spartacus letter. Now, it was obvious to anyone who actually watched the video that it was a parody. It was a satire. Obviously, you know, it was a parody of the you know, stupidity of people who would read the Spartacus letter, which ended basically in saying, you know, and by the way, in my video, I basically said everybody should just wear tinfoil hats to protect themselves from the effects of nano robots that are in the vaccine, allegedly. And YouTube, you know, again, YouTube just has a system where they can just delete your shit for any, you know, just they have a robot that looks at the transcript, or they have some, you know, schmuck who makes minimum wage, looks at it for 15 seconds and goes, oh, that's medical misinformation. It's like, if you have a problem with and oh, by the way, you know, like that's the thing, like I think YouTube's policies suck. If it were up to me, YouTube would not be allowed to delete people's content just arbitrarily like that. It would be one thing if they applied their standards consistently, so that and they did it transparently, so that everybody knew what the standards were. But of course, they never do that. The video that I was parroting, you know, Robert Wallace's stupid crap about the vaccine, about the Spartacus letter, that video is still up. That video is promoting medical misinformation. My parody video gets taken down because it's a fucking parody. I still have outtakes, by the way, of that. I literally couldn't read through it because I had actually written it down. Written down a script for it, and I was I was ad-libbing here and there, but it was pretty much, for the most part, sticking to a script. And I couldn't get through it. I think when I got to the part about Al Capone simplex or something, it just, I don't know, I just kept cracking up. So I have like 2 outtakes where I just start laughing because I can't get through it. Now, the people at YouTube who are the, you know, YouTube police, the Gestapo, you know, they could see that. They can see the videos that I've uploaded. If there was a real appeal process that was real and didn't just consist of an automated message that. And by the way, I know who flagged my video. Like, this person's a hypocrite. This person's a fucking lunatic who, you know, has made like 100 videos about me on his channel. You know, and then accuses me of like being obsessive or something, or like bringing up shit that happened 10 years ago. I think that if any reasonable person can see that somebody is like psychotically obsessed, and they're obsessed with like trying to use me as a scapegoat because their channel had a bunch of videos taken down, and all their, you know, their MGTOW loser club live streams, they're all like on the verge of being canceled by YouTube, and they're going to be. You know, it's just a matter of time, and everybody knows that the writing's on the wall. So I guess I'm like the scapegoat, because once all those MGTOW live streams are taken off YouTube, You know, there you won't have a whole lot to fill your miserable life with. There won't be content to fill it with. So you've got to, you know, this is like the last ditch, desperate attempt to, you know, make it worthwhile. So you've got to like make me into some kind of scapegoat, and he's making all these threats online. You know, thinly veiled threats. And, you know, again, this is the guy who hacked my email account 4 years ago. Okay, so if the police need a reason and, you know, side one way or the other, I think we know how they're going to side. You know, all because I made a comment 4 years ago about Colin Kaepernick and how, you know, you're a fucking hypocrite because because you on the one hand you think YouTube is a platform, even though according to the law it doesn't matter. Platform, schmatform. You are a publisher under the fucking law. The law does not make a distinction between a platform and a publisher. Now you can argue that it should. Wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a parallel universe where, like, the last 40 years haven't been just corporate buttfuckism in America, where corporations get to control everything that we see? That would be nice. There was a time, again, it was over 40 years ago, when America wasn't like that. There was actually a political will to have a sort of like a the political will to treat information as more than just entertainment. It was sort of a public service. But that political will is gone, and so this is the results. We have all these platforms, which again are just really just publishers under the law, that can arbitrarily censor you. And if you don't like it, just, you know, tough shit. You should have thought about that when your party that you choose to align with spent, you know, 40 years making the world what it is, where you have these massive conglomerates, and we have no real effective antitrust laws to break these companies up, these multinational tech companies. You should have thought about that when you and your parties were, you know, allowing these companies, or maybe you weren't even political back then. Maybe you weren't politically active. Well, and guess what? Everybody, you know, we all work to make the world the place it is today, and it is what it is. I personally don't like it that YouTube is like that. I think that it's there's nothing wrong with speaking out against it, which is, I think, what Fred was doing. But whatever. I mean, the Fred thing, that was, again, the Fred thing came up in the conversation because when I had mentioned Colin Kaepernick, I said that, you know, you should probably watch how you say certain things, because it sounds to me like you're sort of a busybody jerk, because we know your history. We know that, you know, you went out of your way to try to get someone fired because you didn't like their art on YouTube. Okay, so you siding with Trump and trying to pressure the NFL to fire, or trying to pressure the NFL to drop Kaepernick because he expresses political opinion. Oh, that's the other thing too. Like, one of the arguments that these nitwits made about YouTube back in 2017 about big tech was that politicians were putting pressure on these tech companies to censor posts, and how that's just wrong, and therefore that's what really makes it a violation of this First Amendment. And it's like, well, if that argument applies in that case, then it should apply to Trump, you know, who doesn't watch sports, by the way, is not a football fan. Opening his big mouth. So, maybe Trump should, shut the fuck up, because none of his business. Like, by the way, there's a church down the street. I don't know what they talk about there. They might talk about stuff I would find offensive. I don't write to my congressperson trying to get this church canceled. I don't concern myself with what the fuck they do. Okay, because I'm not a member of the church. Like, if you're not a football fan, then why the fuck have an opinion about what the NFL should do? Like, you're going to go out of your way. I think the NFL should fire Colin Kaepernick because blah blah blah. Who the fuck asked you, douche? Oh, that's right, no one. I got a deck of cards at the supermarket a couple days ago. I don't know why. Standing in the checkout aisle, and I thought, oh, I'll go ahead and get a deck of cards. So yeah, when this will probably be one of the last streams I do until I get a new channel. A better channel. I'm gonna come back, and here's the funny thing: when I come back, it will be it will not be immediately obvious who I am. Okay, it will be sometime in the future, maybe several months from now, and a channel will come up out of the blue, and it will be a channel that has existed for a while. And you won't immediately recognize who's behind it. But here's the other thing too. One of the things I learned is that if you flag a channel and you don't have any subs or you don't have any videos on your channel, YouTube doesn't give a shit. Okay, they're not going to take the video down just because you flagged it. It only matters if, like, maybe dozens or maybe hundreds or possibly even thousands of people flag a channel. However, if you are a channel that has over maybe 60 subs and you've been around for a while and you have content that people watch, you have watch hours that are getting up there, then your flags will carry more weight. See, this is how I know it was Quintka who flagged Forever Wolf Films off of YouTube. Because if I flag a channel like Forever Wolf Films, YouTube doesn't give a shit. They're not going to do anything. And this is what I learned a year ago. Because my old channel, before it was taken down by YouTube, because I reposted Gary Mosier's Holocaust Denialism, is the video, which was originally, I think, was edited by Broken Mech, but I reposted it, and immediately YouTube just took my old channel down for hate speech. Even though it wasn't me making the speech, it was just I'm reposting something that Gary Mosier said. So before that, I had 67 subs. I had plenty of videos, a fair number of watch hours, and if I had wanted to flag, now I did. Okay, so I did flag Draft Science, and they took because he was making anti-Semitic statements, and he was flagging my videos, so it's tit for tat and all that. So if he's going to flag my videos, I'm going to flag his back. And they took his video down like that. If I tried to do that now with my channel, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make a dent. But Quintka, has 100 subs, He's been on, because of course he deleted his channel several times. But I mean, every time he deletes his channel, he builds back up his, racist fan base, his misogynistic, racist, homophobic fan base back again. So they all resub and they give watch hours to his videos. So his flags carry more clout, a lot more clout. So what it would be an awful big coincidence if whoever flagged Forever Wolf Films channel just happened to do it, and then like the same exact morning. So in other words, he didn't even have to wait for word to get around. He just possibly the same hour that it was flagged off of YouTube, he makes a video talking about telling stories about Mickey Farley flagging Forever Wolf Films off of YouTube. And we're supposed to just believe that he didn't do that? I don't think so. So we know he did it. Now, why did he do that? Well, again, I think I've already made it clear. He's been a troll from the beginning. He was always trolling antinatalists, telling them to kill themselves. And there's evidence of that all over. There's evidence on the now deleted Forever Wolf Films channel. So maybe he's going around deleting all the evidence of his past lives. Because he did have a lot of past lives where he did an awful lot of stuff. And I don't really care about all that, but it's just like now he's like making it apparently his life's mission to teach me a lesson because I made a video called Doxing Fred, and I dared to opine that it's wrong to send videos to someone's employer, even though this person may have or may not have posted their name of their employer on their Vimeo channel, whatever. Especially if your intent behind doing so was to be a troll, like an obnoxious troll, and leave snarky, stupid comments after you did that, basically to rile everybody up. Like, it's obvious that was your intent, and it was basically a way of applying pressure to Fred and his supporters to shut the fuck up. Because he lost an argument, and he's got to get back at people, and force them, make their online life a little bit less comfortable, so that they might be a little less willing to express themselves. Just doing Google's dirty work behind the scenes. Doing your part like a good little soldier butt plug for the Google Corporation, making sure that no one steps out of line, no one sticks a toe out of line, lest their online activities be sent to their employers. It's obvious that's what he was intending to do, because his version of the story doesn't add up. If he was only interested in getting information, why troll afterwards? Why make all these snarky comments for all of his supporters to see, if that was the purpose? Of course, it wasn't his purpose. Anyway, yeah, does anybody give a shit about this, by the way? I don't think they do. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I may as well just go through this because... Okay, so, first of all, you have to understand how Cartesian coordinates work. Every point on this that can be represented by xy, well, traditionally we go xy. So like this is x1, y1. This is, x2, y2. Whatever. And we want to minimize something. We want to minimize... So of all possible line segments that we could draw, we want to find the unique one such that the sum of the the sum of the residuals, alright, sigma, sum of the residuals, which we define to be y sub I minus y hat sub I, and we sum all of those and square the square, so the sum of the squares of the residuals is minimized. And why would we want to do that? Well, because that's the line of best fit. So if I for instance, let's say I had some stupid line like this. This is a horrible regression line because it doesn't match any of the data points. We want to find the line that's most closely approximates the actual data, while still, you know, because obviously we could, if we wanted to, just make some crazy polynomial that, you know, fits the data. That would be no problem. We could do that, but that would not be useful. And neither would a line like this. We want to find, so the useful line would be the one that minimizes the distances between, it minimizes the residuals, or in particular the sum of the residuals. So we call this, some books use E, so I'll just say E. Well, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. This term inside the parentheses, this is E. This is E sub I. We want to minimize the sum of the squares of the E's, and I'm going to call this sum S. So again, we have S is equal to sum of y sub I minus y hat sub I quantity squared. And we want to minimize this. Now, if you want to minimize a function, oh, by the way, I just want to mention, what is y sub hat? Actually, I'll go ahead and write that. That's y. Well, we know what that is. Y hat sub I is equal to mx sub I plus b, right? Because this is our linear equation, right? So we have that, so I'm going to plug that into here. So you have minus mx sub I minus b. All right. Now I want to minimize this function. This is a function of, can you tell me what this is a function of? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? 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 Is this what is this a fucking function of, asshole? Yeah, that's what I thought. This is a multivariate function. It's a function. Now, technically, I guess you could say it's a function of. You could, I guess, if you were really perverse, you could define it as a function of each of the x sub i's, or each of the y sub i's, for that matter. But for our purposes, what we're interested in is finding, because y sub i and x sub i we already know. That's our data set. What we're interested in are these variables, or actually these constants, or these coefficients. This is a coefficient, this is a constant. We want to find the unique m and the b such that this sum is minimized. So we can define s as a function of m and b. Okay, and if we can define it as a function of m and b, we can take the derivative. Oh, this should be squared. We can take the derivative, we can take the partial with respect to m, which is 2 times the sum yi minus m xi minus b times, well, we need to have our chain rule, so minus x sub I, and if we simplify this is going to be 2 times the sum of let's see, 2 times the sum. I need to make sure our signs work. Alright, what I'm going to say is this is the sum of m xi quantity squared plus b x sub I, and then we go our minus y sub I x sub I, and then close parentheses. Is that right? Okay, so this is our, and if we're going to minimize this function, we had better set this equal to 0, so then we can just cancel the 2, right? We just cancel the 2. So we get 1/2 of this. We can also take the partial of x with respect to b. This is more easy. This is 2 times yi minus xi minus b times -1, which is 2 times the sum xi plus b minus yi. And we're going to set that equal to 0, so then we get the cancellation again. We get 1/2. So now what we do is we solve for b. If we solve for b, we get actually, let's take a look at just this here. I want to focus on this. If we can, so this part is the easy part. This is equal to nx bar plus n times b minus ny bar. Hopefully you see why that's true. If you sum up all the x sub i's, you get and you divide by n, you get the average. That's x bar. If you multiply by n, you just get the sum of the x sub i's. If you sum a constant over from 1 to n, again this is from 1 to n, you just get nb. Here you get the same thing. This is n times y bar, and we're saying this is equal to 0, so you can solve for b. For sure you could do that. So we get b is equal to I'm thinking, is this right? Oh, I forgot an. I'm sorry. This should be m. That's one. Yeah. What did I do? Oh, this should be an m. I'm sorry. That's why I'm confused. So we get m times n, or n times m, whatever, which implies that b is y bar minus mx bar. Yeah, okay. So this, yeah, okay. So this is what we need. We also have this thing, which we can also simplify. Yeah, we can simplify this. I'm going to add this to a new page, and we're going to work with it. So this is going to simplify to be. By the way, I just want to mention something. I had a conversation a while back with somebody who said that they were really bad at algebra when they were in college, but then when they went on to calculus, they were really good at calculus. And I'm like, calculus is algebra. I don't know what you know, like all the manipulations you do, like 90% of a calculus class is algebra. You know, the things that you need to know, like the chain rule, that's just like one extra thing to remember. You know, integration by parts, that's one extra thing. But actually applying those things is algebra. If you don't know the rules of algebra, you're not going to pass calculus. People say that calculus is hard because it's complicated. No, it's if you fail a calculus class, I guarantee it's because your algebra sucks. Guarantee it. Now that may not be the case. So if you take a real analysis course, you may not have to know any algebra. You may be able to take, and in that case, you might fail the course because you don't understand the concepts. It really is too complicated. but for you, but not for me. But you know, real analysis was the easiest class I ever took. It was easier than funny book physics. But then that's just the way I am. Different people have different things that are easy to them or more difficult. So this is m. We can take the m out. The sum of x sub I squared plus, and then we can go n times b x bar, and then minus the sum of yi x I. I don't know why I wrote y there. X sub I. Equals 0, and then we can solve for we want to solve for m, right? So we can go m is equal to the sum of x sub I, y sub I, minus n times b x bar. And actually, yeah, so okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in two things. So I'm going to divide by x sub I squared. Divide by, I'm sorry, the sum of x sub I squared. The sum of the squares of the x sub i's. And then I'm going to plug in our b. Remember, our b from here was y bar minus mx bar. So then this is equal to, and then we're going to solve for m again. So actually this is going to be, so we go this, x sub I, y sub I over the sum of the x sub i's squared minus nx bar over, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of this under one denominator, right? That will help us, I think. So I'm going to put all of this under sum of that, and then I'm going to multiply, and oh, you know what? Is that going to work? Damn it. Hold on a second. Yeah, I think I changed my mind. Okay, this is x sub I squared minus this. And then I'm going to multiply this by b, which is y bar minus mx bar. Okay, and then so this here is b. This is our b term, right? And then we can expand. So I'm getting tired of writing this over and over again, but we'll just have to do it for now. Minus, and then we have n x bar y bar over the sum, and then plus m times n x bar quantity squared over the sums of the x sub I squared terms. And so this is equal to m. So what we can do is we can move this over to the other side. So then we can go m times 1 minus n x bar squared over the sum of x sub I squared terms, and then we can just get rid of that term here. And then we can simplify this. You know, like this term here, we could rewrite this as, so this is m times 1. We could rewrite this as the sum of x sub I squared over sum of x sub I squared, but then we have a common denominator, so we can just put everything under one common denominator, right? So this is sum of x sub I squared, And then look at this. Now we can do the same thing over here. This has the same denominator, right? So we go x sub I squared, and then we can cancel terms. So if we have two denominators that are the same, we can just get rid of them. So get rid of those. So then we have this nice thing here. And then what we can do is just solve for m, right? So this implies m is equal to the sum of x sub I, y sub I, minus n times x bar, y bar, all over the sum of x sub I squared